Greetings and welcome to episode 2 of this special 6-part mini-series of Clock Tower. In part 1 we covered an overview of the series, mapping out the series timeline and inconsistent naming by region. If you missed it, I recommend going back to watch it first. Don't worry, I'll be here waiting for you. Good, now we're all caught up, let's get stuck into perhaps the best loved entry in the series. The original Clock Tower for the Japanese Super Famicom and Wonderswan. For the sake of not making this series too long, I've also decided to include the game known as The First Fear for the PS1, as it is essentially a re-released remaster of the original game. I will do my best to distinguish between each version though as we go along. Starting on a bit of a low note from my side, the original Japanese Super Famicom version is the only entry that I do not have a physical copy of. Instead, I opted for the Wonderswan option and The First Fear for the PS1, as they are essentially the same game. At a price tag of over $160, I hope you can understand my decision not to purchase the first edition. So, the first entry in our list, Clock Tower for the Super Famicom. This 1995 entry introduced us into the rather grim world of 2D point-and-click survival horror. Jennifer, the Barrows Mansion, and of course the terrifying Scissorman, also known as Bobby. The plot of the game is based in Norway. Our heroine Jennifer Simpson is an orphan that is being rehomed along with a group of her fellow orphans at the Barrows Mansion. A rich recluse known as Simon Barrows has agreed to rehome the girls in his mansion, known as the Clock Tower. Things soon take a turn for the worst as you hear screams and there is that inevitable first appearance of Bobby the Scissorman. A deformed boy that is intent on butchering you. The ultimate aim of the game is to escape the mansion in any way you can whilst also rescuing your friends. It's likely not to go down too well though, as the game is one that really wants you to experience the horror. Whilst the game is all about puzzle solving and exploration, there's also a fear meter system mechanic to manage as you explore the mansion. During the game, Scissorman will be stalking your every move. The exact path he takes is never certain. Sometimes he will appear upon inspecting an area, at other times he will just randomly engage you. In terms of keeping the game fresh, it's an excellent mechanic. As Jennifer is pursued, you'll have to manage her fear meter. A blue background indicates calm, whilst yellow, orange and red backgrounds indicate her fear increasing. Upon gaining the red fear level, any attack from the Scissorman will be far more difficult to repel, so it's best to keep Jennifer calm if you can. Using Jennifer's run action also increases her fear level, although you can sit calmly to counteract this fear rising. The sustained fear level will have an influence on the game ending, so try to keep as calm as you can for that better ending. At times you will face Bobby straight on, at other times it's best to hide until he's gone. Due to the random generation of the mansion rooms, you always seem to be on the back foot each time you play the game. It's said that the game takes its influence from a range of sources. Dario Argento's Phenomena and Suspiria provide the main bulk of the horror, while Scissorman himself is said to have been influenced by the antagonist of the movie The Burning, in which a shear-wielding maniac kills his prey. Others have suggested that Jennifer herself appears to have been influenced by the real-world actress Jennifer Connelly. I have to agree, I believe there's a strong resemblance here. It's also highly likely that Scissorman himself was influenced by a classic German children's story called Struwelpeter, a story in which children are mutilated by having their thumbs cut off by a scissor-wielding antagonist. So yeah, best not suck your thumbs if you're born in Europe. Europe has quite a dark history with sinister fairy tales by authors such as the Grimm brothers. I think that setting the game in Norway was no coincidence. As mentioned in part 1, there's a few ways to experience this 2D outing of Clock Tower. Firstly, the original Japanese-only Super Famicom release, an emulated fan-translated ROM, the Wonderswan edition, or the First Fear remake for the PS1. This is the Japanese Wonderswan edition. The Wonderswan edition lacks the detail and additional sound of the Super Famicom, but I was really impressed with what I experienced. The game is faithful to the feel of the Super Famicom release and a really solid game in its own right. However, this Wonderswan version of the game seems to be one of the least collected, perhaps because many people don't even know it exists. The Wonderswan wasn't exactly a high hitter outside of Japan, so it's a bit of a gaming novelty for us. If you're looking for hidden gems though, particularly if it's horror, Japan and obscure, this is the one to go for. I had a lot of fun playing this one, and as it's on the Wonderswan, you can take the fear with you. As you can see by the gameplay here, all of the right elements are in place. It's really only the monochrome graphics and the resolution that you'll notice as a gaming experience. The Wonderswan edition is easily the least known about edition of the game, if you exclude the PC port. I find this a bit of a shame as it's a true hidden gem for the system and an important outing for the Clock Tower series. At the moment, the Wonderswan edition is not one of the more expensive games to collect in the series. However, I think over time, this is going to be the one that will increase most in value. At least partly due to the nature of its obscurity. The PS1 edition, The First Fear, is a step up from the Super Famicom release. Additional cutscenes and audio have been sparingly supplemented into the game. All things considered, the First Fear re-release of the game is perhaps the best overall package if you want to play the original Clock Tower. That's not to say that you won't enjoy the original just as much. Personally, I think the remaster hit just the right levels of additional graphics, additional sound, but it was done in such a way that it really didn't take away from the original game. This is why it's probably my favourite of the 2D editions. It's also worth noting that this is the first edition of the First Fear. Other box designs were available when the game came to budget release. Trekking through the Barrows Mansion is an unforgettable experience. The great use of atmospheric sound, distinctive graphics, and sense of scale and emptiness of the mansion created something new for Japanese gamers. Sure, there are cheap jump scares in Clock Tower. However, this isn't what you're going to take away from the game. What you're going to remember is the atmosphere and the sense of dread of when is the Scissorman going to strike next. What made Clock Tower a great game experience for me was the entirety of the experience. The mechanics of the run and hide are simple, the fear meter easy to understand, and the graphics and sound hit just the right chord to make the game something really quite special. There's nothing quite like opening up a new area to see the next grisly murder. Overall, I'm very much sold on this entry of the game. It's original, well realised, and a really sad footnote in history that this was a Japan-only exclusive. Had I have played this game back in the day when it was released, I would certainly have been a long-standing fan. However, my entanglement with the Clock Tower series began with our next entry on the list though. A game that we call Clock Tower in the UK and US, but Clock Tower 2 in Japan. Join me in the next episode as Clock Tower leaves the shores of Japan to bring a murderous 3D rampage towards Western gamers.